Gen Z is getting priced out of Canada. I know a lot of you guys in my generation still remember the classic six-figure buzzword, the big 100K. Whoever finished university or got their degree and managed to get a job and climb their way up to make 100K made it. They weren't crazy rich, but they were very well off. That used to be what everyone was going for. And what people are starting to realize is that 100K isn't nearly as shiny as it used to be. I mean, remember how even 20 bucks used to be a good amount of money? Like you could go out and get something with that. And now it's just like pocket change. You go spend money on anything, groceries, electronics, whatever it is, you're spending $100 minimum. People have started to figure out that 100K just doesn't cut it anymore. And in this video, I'm also going to give you actual data and actual stats. In fact, these days, 100K is just enough to live a single life decently. And I'm not just saying that. To those of you that actually haven't done the math on what I'm about to show you or haven't seen things this way, I'm going to break it all down with actual data and actual numbers, because I used to teach this exact topic in my previous life. So let's imagine you make $100,000 every single year, or at least that's the dream. And because I used to do payroll in Ontario, for those of you that don't know, Ontario is a province in Canada. I'm gonna give you the numbers I actually worked with. And if you guys live in different provinces or in the States, for example, just apply your own numbers to this and you can actually follow along. So I'm gonna keep this very simple. First things first, we know we have income tax deductions. So when you get 100K, you don't actually see it in your bank. Roughly, you're gonna keep about 70,000 of that. That means close to 30% of your income, because of your tax bracket, gets sent to the government. Just sent away, forget about it. You're now at 70K. But we all know that. This is not even the interesting part. The next thing is, did you know that for the employer to pay you 100,000, that you don't even get, by the way, the employer must spend 115,000. Yes, that's right. Imagine they spend 115,000 and you end up with 70,000. Where did all the money go? We're not talking 1 or 2%. This is a huge sum of money gone. Your employer doesn't have it, nor do you have it. So that roughly 15% portion that the employer covers is, of course, it's a bunch of CPP, taxes, EI, a bunch of fees that you don't really have a say in. So this is where we're at so far. In order for the employer to pay you, they pay the government. And then in order for you to get paid, you pay the government. So that's 2 times. Now here's where it really gets fucked up. Let's not forget that when we go to the store, we pay tax. Here in Ontario, it's 13%. So check this out. Remember how I just said roughly almost 30% of your income gets deducted immediately for tax? Well, now let's add 13% on that. We're gonna round this number to about 40%. So realistically, your buying power, or the money you can actually spend, is now about 60,000 or less, because you take income tax plus sales tax. So that's 3 times already. And here's a bonus one that you don't really think about, but let's just say you're working at a company and that company pays you 100,000, as in our example, but we go one step further. How does the company get paid? Have you thought of that? Your company probably has clients, contractors, whatever way they make money. Maybe you guys have a product or service to sell, and so whenever your invoices are paid, there is also taxable amounts of money there. I'm not going to go into the numbers, but you guys just have to know that for your clients to pay the business or the company, they must pay tax on it when they're paying your invoice. When you receive your invoice payment, you pay tax on the received payment. That's 2. The company pays their employees, they pay tax on that. Payroll tax, other fees. For you to receive your money, you get income tax deductions. And then for you to spend your money, you get hit with sales tax. That's like a 5-step system to tax the shit out of every possible step along the way of when the money goes from the service that was provided into your pocket. Tell me that's not fucked up. And hopefully this opens up some of your minds, because this is actually how it works. So whenever you're in a place or in a state or country or province, wherever you live, they're saying things like, oh, tax is just 10%, tax is only 13%. That is the biggest load of bullshit that you are being told. It's more like taxes 40%. Sure, maybe you're in a lower bracket, 30%. The minimum you do is you combine your income tax that you pay plus the sales tax, and that's the bare minimum you're getting scammed out of your money. Isn't that crazy? I don't know about you guys, but for the work I do and the work I put in, I don't remember the government being there to help me. I don't remember them giving me a lending hand for me to pay them 40% of my income. Why would I do that? So naturally you think, all right, well, I'm talking about somebody who is an employee. You're on a T4. I don't know what that is in American terms, but that's your income statement and your tax statements. What about contractors? What about business ownership? What about investments? There are so many other ways to make money. First off, yes, you do get more tax benefits if you're a contractor or if you're also a business owner. But it's still not as lucrative as you think. Remember, when you're doing payroll and you're paying all your employees, you're actually paying them so much more because you're paying for their taxes just to pay them than they're actually receiving. And so nobody gets to keep that money. Nobody actually sees it. It's just like I said, 115K turns into 100K gross paid to the employee, and then they're left with 70K. So you're throwing out 45, 50K out the window immediately, and that feels bad both for you and your employee. It's not like you're keeping it back. But anyway, that's a little bit off track and I'm going on a tangent here. So we're gonna bring it back. Why is 100,000 not enough? Why is it not as much as we used to think? Well, we've arrived at 60,000. So you're left with about 60,000 as from our example. But let's also price in the fact that we got bills to pay. There is a cost of living, which just recently went up by a lot. I'm not gonna bore you with all the details of all the math, but most people these days aren't making 100,000 and they're forced to live with roommates. So if you're someone who's single or maybe you're living with someone, you always need roommates around you. Not only that, if you even think to 10 years ago, people used to be able to have a nice place to live, a nice car, good food, essentially be very well taken care of on a $100,000 salary. And since this is simply not the case, because of all the cost of living going up, because of all the increased expenses, that's where all of your money gets eaten up. So the people who are making less than 100,000 feel like if only I got to that higher number, I would be so much better off. But the truth is, not really. You're not gonna randomly, magically have a large sum of money sitting around at the end of the year that you can invest or that you can save or save for a trip to go on. Probably not gonna happen. So you're stuck with a very limited amount of options. Either you decrease your bills, meaning you're gonna live on the bare minimum, so now you can save some money and you can go on some vacations or you can put money away, or you're just gonna live like the average person, spend all your money on all your bills and still be left with nothing. But the point is, 100,000 just simply isn't enough now. The six-figure dream is no longer feasible. It's not a thing anymore. You need 3-4 times that to feel anything. I personally know people that make that amount of money and they're still very tight with their budget. Sure, they might be having nicer things, but that doesn't actually make you free, does it? You still have to go to work, you still have a certain amount of time in your day, and you're still basically spending all your money. Now, you guys are probably thinking, all right, I get your point. Point made, point taken. What's the solution though? First and foremost, the solution to each person is going to look different, but I'm going to share mine. I stepped away from doing all of that. That's why I call it my past life, being in all that, being employed or doing contract work or running a business. And I'm taking a completely different approach because I realized none of those things are actually going to set me free or give me the life I want. Now, as some of you guys have been asking in the comments, what are you going to do now? Or I would reply with, I'm just acquiring skills. So what are those skills? For the past 6 years, since I was 20 years old and now I'm 26, I just did a bunch of different things. I tried different jobs all the way from construction to sales to management to HR, any random things, fast food jobs, whatever it is. And that really gave me a perspective. But I'm not here to talk about those experiences. The skills that I'm focusing on and that I've learned in the past couple of years are communication skills. Now that's a very broad term. What is communication skills? I was just as confused as you are. I was the worst communicator on this planet. The only people I could talk to are me, myself, well, and maybe my friend. That's about it. But I forced myself to go out and speak to people. I used to do sales door to door. for a living. Now, I'm not recommending that. I'm not saying you guys should go and knock doors, but what I did was find some way to gain those skills. Now, while I was at it, I also learned how to sell, how to be persuasive. And as I was able to move up through different roles and positions, I learned how to hire people, how to fire people, how to have uncomfortable conversations. How do you manage employees? How do you do payroll? How do you run the business side of things? I'm not saying these things to glaze myself. I'm just saying that these are the skills. Objectively speaking, these are skills, a whole group of them, that I have been learning and learned over the past few years that will help me build the life I'm looking for. And while at the time, I didn't have an idea of what exactly I want to be doing, I knew what I want, but I didn't know what is the right career choice. I knew I didn't want to go to school and study. That's why I dropped out. But what course, what vehicle should I take to get there, to my destination? Well, it turns out, as you gather experience through different jobs and you gather skills, everything starts to come together. And personally, what I've chosen to do is put myself out there online. Not as a guru who's trying to teach things, not as some kind of life coach, because I'm only 26, what do I know? But I'm also not going to discredit myself. And I do know one thing for a fact. Working online, whichever way it may be, either it's content or it's some kind of agency or it's selling stuff, online shopping, it doesn't matter what you guys choose or what I choose to do, to each their own. But there are so many negatives that you can avoid from what I just described in the first half of this video. All of that can be avoided by just doing things online. You don't get to avoid doing the work, you don't get to avoid learning the skills, but you do get to avoid with something like sales dropping during the winter months because people are depressed and no one wants to buy anything. But if your business is online, well, there are parts of the world that winter doesn't exist. I've talked about this before in other videos. It's just inevitable. Moving your work online is the way to go. That's what I believe. And with this channel, those of you that follow me or will follow me, you will see what I do from this point onwards, or from when I started this, which is just half a year ago. And here's the final thing I'm going to say before ending the video. And this question might have been on your minds. How do you know it's going to work for you? How do you know what you're doing you're certain of it? Having gone through so many different jobs, positions, and getting all those skills did something very important for me. And that's give me the confidence and courage to take the leap forward and bet on myself. The only reason I'm putting myself out there and doing the things I'm doing is because I'm 100% betting on myself and believe in my ability. Whether it's something I know that I can put to use or something I don't know, I know I can find out, figure it out, and learn because I built confidence in myself through doing all the things in the past. That's what I want to leave you guys with. If you guys want to be part of the journey, feel free to follow me. And other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.